I'm gonna show you how I went from painting like this to this by just changing a few things in my art process. This is something I like to call digital mush. And digital mush happens when we are over blending our art and we paint as if all the edges of every object, no matter what it is, whether it is a portrait, a piece of fruit, fur, whatever, we paint it in the same exact way with that just kind of like fuzzy brush. My work used to be overly blended. I had a lot of fuzzy edges, and I did this because I was inexperienced and I was just overworking my painting process. The number one issue that happens that causes us to overblend and have this almost like insecure approach to adding color is just having a poor structure underneath. And I'm literally using an example here of a wonky house. So I want you to think of your paintings as if they are houses that you're building. You wanna have this like really strong foundation and this clear and concise way of where the walls are gonna go, where the rooms are gonna go. If we just kind of throw everything quickly together and think that we're gonna patch everything up through paints and adding a couple flowers and picture frames, the house is gonna look a mess. It's gonna still be having a poor structure, wonky, tilted ceilings. It's going to end up a mess, and we're going to try to fix all of those structural issues in the coloring phase, which is not where we want to fix it. We really want to start in those beginning stages and build that really, really strong structure or sketch. Here's an example of one of my sketches that is a really nice, clear, strong foundation. Everything is very readable. My lines are confident, and that gave me just this ease of adding color onto that sketch where I'm not trying to fix as I'm adding color. I'm really just building off of that foundation. I did a quick example of a really loose, rough sketch where there's certain wonky elements. Some of the proportions are off, the eyes are different levels. It's a little off, but maybe I'm drawing the sketch. I'm like, you know what? I'll figure it out later. I'll just add color, and then I'm adding color and I'm just blending things out, just hoping and praying it's all gonna work out in the end. And it ends up looking very blurred, very over blended with then random kind of harsh, sharp lines in different areas. You can tell that there's this hesitation in that overly blended piece because it started out not strong. It's horrible. It's horrible. So the most important part of this whole video is just having that nice, strong foundation. Think of building your house and making sure everything is figured out and planned out ahead of time. So when you're adding color, it's not the fixing stage of your piece. The second most important thing to avoid this digital mush, over blending, messy looking painting is picking the right brushes for you. When I am picking out my brush, and I'm using Procreate right now, I like to look for a brush that both has hard and soft edges. So you can see in the Salamanca brush here, there is a nice hard edge on the top and bottom, but it has this nice transparency and loose edges that really I can create hard and soft edges and just almost use that as a catch-all brush. So I'm just gonna take this Nico roll brush that is also in the painting section. It has this really nice texture underneath, which I love looking for brushes that also have that texture. So I don't actually need to rely on the blending tool at all. While I'm doing this little gradient here, I am strictly using the pressure opacity settings, pressing harder and then lighter as I get to where I want the colors to merge together. The texture there works for you and it just kind of mixes the colors naturally. I'm also doing a little example underneath here where I'm going to use the blending brush. As I am picking the mixer brush for this, I'm gonna go down to basics and select that mint brush because I like the little grainy texture, because when I'm using just like a solid airbrush, I feel like everything starts to look very like slick and digital. So I always look for a little texture even in my blending brushes. And as I'm laying that blending brush in, I am lightly just using hair-like strokes to just get as much blend as possible. I don't want to go crazy with the blending and get that digital mush where you're just going in almost without a care in the world really hard. Just light strokes just to bring things together, because you still want some of those like really nice brush strokes to show through. I barely use the blending tool. I really just rely on the brushes I use and pressure opacity settings. But if I am going to be using a blending brush, less is always more. The final tip that really helped me get away from the over blending is actually just playing around and getting comfortable with the brushes that I end up picking. I am going to go through doing just some like sphere gradient studies, just seeing how different brushes interact and blend together and seeing what feels natural to my own style. So before you jump into this huge painting and you don't know what brushes you're going to use, just do little studies, whether it's just those little gradients, doing a couple sphere studies. And I'm going to show you how these different spheres that I'm using look with different brushes. So the brush I'm using here is my render brush that has a nice hard edge and soft edge with opacity settings. And I'm actually going to have this available for you to download for free to try it out yourself. But this is definitely one of my go-to brushes when I am rendering. It just has a little bit of everything. The texture, the smoothness, it blends really nicely, but you still get those painterly brush strokes. I love this brush. So that's in the description if you want to download and try it out yourself. The next brush is the Nico roll brush. And the rest of the brushes are just going to be the standard Procreate brushes that I like to grab. And this one has a lot of texture in here. It definitely has a bit more of this gritty feel, which I do love. But it is a little hard to get full control of that brush. But I do love it if I want to just add that grungy texture in, if I want to use it for backgrounds. So I'm just playing around and seeing how this all blends together. Another favorite of mine, and I used this earlier, is the Salamanca brush. This is a painting brush, and it has these paint qualities without being overly mixy and blendy, but it still is really, really nice. Has that nice little canvas texture underneath, but you can see it naturally blending with the colors really, really nicely. And it has that nice sharp edge, which I absolutely love. I feel like when I am painting, I almost always use these types of brushes that have this angular, sharper edge on the outside, so I can really have edge control on my objects that I'm painting. If you can remember in the beginning when I was showing you those fruits where they were just all fuzzy, having a sharper brush is really nice because you can control that you're not getting these like either really soft edges or really hard edges. I view this step almost as important as building that strong foundation and structure for your painting, so it saves you time in the long run. It may feel counterintuitive to spend a little time beforehand and you're trying these different brushes, you're drawing these little spheres, whatever it may be, but when you go in with a plan with the brushes that you're going to use, and you're not using 50 different brushes, but you have maybe 3 total that you're like, these are my brushes that I'm bringing in, it is going to save you so much time in the long run, and it's also going to make your painting feel a lot more cohesive. I'm also going to do a top row using these very soft brushes just to show you how difficult it is to get rid of that really overly blended digital mush feeling when you're using these like puffy, fuzzy airbrushes. And there is a time and place for these brushes. I do use them once in a while, but again, you want to have control of that edge, and if everything has that just fuzz, it's going to make your painting look really flat, very amateur, and we want to avoid that. Going in with another fuzzy brush, this one is much more textured, and I actually really love this brush, and I think that these softer edges brushes are really great for certain things, specifically if you're drawing things in the distance where things aren't going to have sharp edges because of atmospheric perspective and you want everything to just kind of be fuzzed, pushed back in the background. These softer brushes are something that you would gravitate towards. But if you're drawing something up close or you're doing a portrait where we're getting these very sharp in focus lines, we don't want to be using these types of brushes. Same thing with this spray paint. It has a nice texture to it. I would love to use it almost like really big over and create like skin texture, but I wouldn't be using this to paint most objects. It is really creating this kind of uncontrolled, fuzzy looking sphere. Not loving this. However, again, this is the time where you want to experiment and see what is working with you. As I was using that, I was immediately like, nope, this is not for me. So using this same exact process of painting these spheres in the same way, the same colors, you can see the very different results you get from various brushes. So this is why it's so important to just take the time to get to know the brushes, create your own brushes, try things out before jumping into anything big, because then it feels overwhelming and it's going to take you triple the amount of time to finish a painting. That is how I went from painting like this to this by just changing a few things in my art process. Let me know if there's anything else you're struggling with, whether it is with drawing and painting or running your art business, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.